How's it going, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of Perfect Reload Weekly, where we take a look back at the week in video game news. My name is Steve, and I am joined, as always, by Christian Slater. Christian, we actually played some games together this week, man. So how you doing?
When do we get to talk about the erotic bear game?
We're gonna kick things off with the erotic bear game. I guess maybe it was just FOMO, or just wanting to be a part of the big video game conversation that's going on. But I decided I would check out Baldur's Gate 3. It's pretty much the biggest thing out there right now. I talked about it last week. It was cracking the top 10, if not the top 5. I don't remember where we landed last week because obviously, I have to record and get the show out, and it just kind of kept getting bigger and bigger. I think it ended up being number 3 or number 2 all time for most consecutive players on Steam. I mean, it is... To say it's a massive success is an understatement. It is. I mean, it is the biggest game right now. It's going to end up being one of the biggest games of the year. And I don't know. I guess I just didn't want to miss out. So I decided I'd give it a play and see what I think of it. And, I remember growing up, like Icewind Dale and the original Baldur's Gates, and like Planescape Torment and all that stuff. And I dabbled here and there. I want to say I ended up with a copy of Icewind Dale at one point and played a little bit of it because, to me, it's visually at least, it was very close to Diablo, and I grew up a big Diablo 2 fan. So I had this curiosity about these games, and then I had played, it was a few years ago at this point, would have been maybe, I think it would have been before 2020. It was Divinity Original Sin. I played on whatever one was on the Xbox One. I played a little bit of that and thought that was pretty solid. So I wasn't quite sure how it was going to take to Baldur's Gate 3. It's such a massive, massive game. They had the first kind of chapter or chunk or whatever it was out in early access, and people saying that they put like 80 hours into just that, and it's not even the full game. So it's definitely kind of like daunting to think about. And seeing the way the combat works, it's movement based. You can only move so far. You can only do so many things per turn. And I don't necessarily have an issue with that. It actually, kind of combines some things that I like. I like turn-based combat. I really do. And not just in games like this, just kind of in general. Like I've never was a fan of real-time strategy games. I played Command & Conquer and some StarCraft, but I always liked stuff like Civilization, where it was turn-based. You can kind of take your time and think about things. And stuff like XCOM, where you are kind of moving in a strategic way and it's turn-based. So, that kind of like triggers that part of my brain, that part of enjoyment out of video games. And I also really appreciate the fact that, you can really role play this game. You can talk your way out of things. A lot of games just force you to, have only one tool in your tool bag, and that's a hammer, and that's the only way to get through anything. So I like the fact that there's a little bit of freedom there, but I still was kind of apprehensive about, like, I don't really know anything about Dungeons and Dragons. I mentioned last week I had played it once and I kind of ruined the game. I didn't realize I was going to ruin the game after the fact. I felt pretty bad about it. And, I just never played again. I never, knew anybody that I knew a lot of people that played, but I didn't know anybody that was willing to take on a new player or start a new campaign or anything. So I just never did. I'd still, to this day, I would love to sit down and give it like a real shot and try it out. I'm not a big fantasy fan. I can put up with it. I just don't like a lot of the tropes that kind of come with it. But so far in Baldur's Gate 3, it's really kind of turning my opinion on that stuff. I'm not surprised that I'm enjoying the game because it's a well-made game, but I am a little surprised that I'm enjoying it this much. I always kind of just, in the past, I kind of just laughed at things ahead, elves running around and orcs and dwarves and all this stuff. It's like, it's just not my flavor. It's just not my speed, and, I think actually Game of Thrones went a really long way for me being able to like kind of divorce that stuff in my head, where with Game of Thrones, it was like, okay, there are these kind of silly characters and silly tropes and all this stuff, but it is a good story and it's well acted. I can look past maybe the things that I traditionally wouldn't like in a genre, just to experience the story. And that's kind of what I'm doing with Baldur's Gate. You know, it's helping me kind of break through those preconceived notions that I have about, you know, fantasy as a genre, because, you know, I am painting the whole genre with one brush, you know, kind of lumping it all in as being the same. And it's obviously not. There's different flavors, you know. But I am really surprised how much I am enjoying it. I enjoyed going through the character creation portion and trying to figure stuff out. You know, I was pretty committed that I was like, you know, if I'm playing this game, I don't want to just play a human. You know, let's mix it up. So I ended up going with a half elf, which apparently so did everybody else, because Larian Studios put out a graphic. I don't know when they put it out. I saw it for the first time last night. And it was kind of like the stats of the first weekend or first week of the game. I can't remember what it was. I think it was the first weekend. And the most common class or most common race was half elf. And I was like, all right, well, whatever. You know, I don't know. It seemed kind of interesting, especially because, you know, it has that line of flavor text where it's like, because it's a half elf, you know, they don't really know where they fall in society. And I was like, oh, that's kind of an interesting backstory to have. You know, you can kind of play both sides of the coin in a way. And I wanted to pump up my charisma as much as possible, because I really kind of want to play this game as just sort of like a smart ass who likes to stir things up and try and talk their way out of a situation. And I haven't played the game that much, you know, a few hours in, but I have had the opportunity to hit some of those charisma, you know, checks with the dice roll and getting that huge buff. I think I'm getting like a +4 to everything because of that. And so that's been quite a bit of fun to do. And it's interesting because the way the game starts, you know, they get you into combat pretty quick. They get you into, you know, conversation and all that pretty quick. You know, there's some dice roll stuff in there, so you can get used to that system if you're not familiar with it. And, you know, you meet like a handful of characters throughout the first part, and then they kind of just dump you into this big combat section towards the end of that opening area, which made me realize very quickly why everybody is saying that you need to save constantly. Like, it has quick saves going, and you can actually change it in the options of how many quick saves you want to have happen. And it really kind of made me realize that, because at one point I did die at the beginning. I lost. There's like a boss character at the end, and I did die, and I was like, oh, I have to do this whole thing over again because I didn't manually save, and the last quick save was not during this whole portion for whatever reason. So now I gotta go back and start all over. And at one point in the beginning, there's like a character that's kind of meant to help you. And I didn't realize that, because to me, I saw him and I was like, oh, he's the enemy. Like, he's very obviously the enemy. You know, he was the person that was imprisoning me on this ship and put this brain bug in me. I need to kill him too. And I realized, like, oh, I probably shouldn't have killed him. He was helping, you know, against the boss character. And I was like, oh man, like you can really make some choices in this game, both interesting choices like, hey, what happens if I do kill this character? And also choices that maybe you didn't necessarily intend to happen. Like, oh, I accidentally killed a friendly. I accidentally killed this person that's, you know, maybe he pops up, and he does. Like, after I did my second round of it, after I died, I didn't attack him, and he does pop up later. And it's like, oh, wow, okay, that wouldn't have happened if I had killed him in the beginning. And it's interesting. And there's also like, one of the main party members, the origin characters, I think are what they were calling them, is you can play as them if you want. I decided to go with a custom character. One of them you can miss on the beginning, and you do bump into her later on. But, you know, if you get her in the beginning, you know, you kind of form this relationship with her, you know, even though it's a quick amount of time, like in terms of like gameplay, it's maybe like 30 minutes, 40 minutes, something like that. But you still have enough time to kind of like understand who who she is. And you have this kind of bonding moment with her, due to kind of the forwarding plot device in the game. You know, you have this ticking clock because you have this thing in your head that you need to get out. So it's really interesting, you know, the kind of the way that they introduce characters. And once you kind of get out into the open world, I didn't realize that I actually missed a major character. So actually the next time I play the game, I'm going to completely stop what I'm in the middle of doing and backtrack to find him, because I don't want to miss him. Because some of the characters, I was looking it up, because I noticed, I was like, oh, you know, I'm watching other people play this game and they all have this character in their party and they're about the same place I am. Why didn't I get him? So I had to look up like why I missed him. I was like, oh, there was a fork on the road. I went left. He's on the right. And for some of the characters, it's like, oh, if you don't meet her here, you'll meet her later. But for this guy, I didn't see a thing that said, oh, you'll meet him later if you don't get him there. So I want to go back because I don't, I want to have all these party characters. I want to try and have all these conversations and have, the party made up of people and this whole thing. And so I'm gonna go backtrack and do it. And what's cool is the game is going to be okay with that. It doesn't matter that I was kind of in the middle of doing this one thing. I can stop what I'm doing and go somewhere else. I kind of did that. There's a point where you get, and obviously it all depends on which kind of way you go, I guess, in the beginning of the game, but eventually you get to a locked door and it says like, oh, you need to have this item to get it. So it's like, okay, we'll we'll go over here. And so you go over there and along the way you find what you need to open that door, but there's nothing saying that like, hey, you have to go backwards now to open that door. I kept going forward, and within 5 minutes, I'm in the middle of this massive story thing, this goblin battle between these warring factions of druids that want to get outsiders out. And it's like, whoa, I am like knee deep in this thing. All of a sudden, I still have no idea what's beyond that locked door because I've never gone back to go and check. I am like in their city now and like interacting with other townsfolk and stuff. And it's just like, how quickly you can just go off to a different path and wind up getting sucked into this big thing. I understand now why this game is so big and so large, and why it's a game that you could pour hundreds of hours into. And I don't know, it's a game that I'm going to obviously keep playing. There's no way I'm going to have it finished by the end of the year or anything like that, but I am going to give it that kind of pass, when it comes to game of the year time, because I think that this is probably strong enough that it's going to be at the very least a conversation for game of the year, when we get there in a few months. And, last year I kind of made the caveat because it was such a weak year for me last year where I didn't play as many things as I played. I've played triple the amount of games this year than I did for the entire year last year. And we're not even done. We got 4 months left, I kind of gave myself that caveat last year of like, well, if I didn't finish the game, that's okay. I can still make the list, because if I don't do that, then what the hell am I going to put on this list, And so with this year, I am trying to force it to be games that I finished, or if it's a game that doesn't necessarily have an end point, I played enough of it to have a really good grasp, because it's like Street Fighter 6. How do you finish Street Fighter 6? Like, you don't finish Street Fighter 6. It's an ongoing thing, right? I didn't really play any live service games this year outside of Diablo, but Diablo does have like a story endpoint. You can finish the story. So it's kind of one of those things with the Baldur's Gate. It's like, if I put 20, 30 hours into Baldur's Gate, I got a pretty damn good idea if I'm enjoying this game enough to say that it's one of my favorites of the year, So I think it's just gonna be a game that I kind of pick away at and play, especially because it's not a game that I have on console. It's a game I have on PC. The console versions aren't out yet. PS5 version is coming out a little bit later. I think it's next month or at the end of this month. I can't remember. And then the Xbox version is just kind of like up in the air right now because they're having some issues getting it going over there. So playing this game does mean that I have to be locked here in my office to play. And, that's one of those things where it's like, most of the time I want to sit on the couch and play a game. So I play most of my games out there, if I'm playing a game on PC, it's usually just for the purposes of recording gameplay for this channel. It's just easier for me to do that because, the microphone's here and everything, everything's all set up. But, it was really nice this past Friday night. I got done with work and got done with what I needed to do around the house, did some cleaning, cooked dinner, all that stuff. And I was like, you know what? I kind of just want to go and sit at the computer and play this game, just have a snack or whatever and just sit there and kind of like zone out and play this game. And I ended up sitting there for I sat here 2.5 hours on Friday night just playing Baldur's Gate. And it's like, man, I haven't done this since the days of being knee deep into Civilization. I might spend a few hours in here playing games, but it's like, okay, I'm playing this game and recording it, and then I'm editing it, and then that video is done. Okay, now fire up the next game. I got to record 30 minutes of that, edit it, that kind of thing. It's very, very different, And so to just play this game for kind of pure pleasure of playing the game. You know, I didn't record any footage. I'm not putting it up on the channel. I really just wanted to play this game just for me and just kind of experience it, that not worry about having to have a running commentary, not worrying about having to critique my feelings on the game as I'm experiencing it. Like, I just really wanted the game to kind of just check out of all that, because the other big stuff that's coming out this year is stuff that's going to be recorded for this channel or streamed or whatever it is. So it's nice to have that kind of difference and just kind of play Baldur's Gate at my own pace without having to worry about that. And I know I've been kind of gushing on and on about it. Christian, you ended up playing some of it with me. We partied up, man. What are you got any thoughts so far?
This game seems like it was tailor-made just for me. I could be a sweet, demonic serial killer elf. I could make sweet, sweet love to a bear. My dick can't be contained by my pants. I didn't know that playing D&D was the same as going to a swingers party.
Yeah, I think they patched out the dick bursting through the pants thing, but I'm glad you're enjoying it, man. You know, we don't really play games together. You're usually just kind of standing over hovering over my shoulder, being critical. But yeah, it's one of those games where I really didn't think I was going to enjoy it as much as I have, and I think, you know, for a critical standpoint, you know, and I just kept thinking about Diablo while playing this, and obviously they're very different games. Like, surface level, if you're just looking at them, screenshots, maybe even a little bit of video footage, although once you see the game in motion, you realize pretty quickly that they're quite different. But, you know, they are a computer RPG, that classic CRPG kind of thing. Obviously very different gameplay styles. You know, Diablo is not turn-based, and Diablo is a very linear story. Like we talked about earlier, everything in Diablo can only be solved one way: killing everybody and finishing that dungeon and advancing that story or doing that fetch quest. And, you know, it's pretty much everything has the same outcome, right? Like, everybody's story is going to pretty much end the same way in that game. So they are very different games in that regard, but they are kind of the most similar analogs to each other that I can think of, at least of what I played this year. And, you know, so far I've played much more Diablo than I have of Baldur's Gate. You know, I've only played Baldur's Gate, you know, I just got it a couple nights ago. And I just, you know, as much of a Diablo fan as I am, I think even just only playing just a few hours of Baldur's Gate, like, I think I've enjoyed it way more. It's not so drab. It's not so bleak, and just like everything in Diablo 4 just kind of looks so samey. You know, everybody is just like over dramatizing everything. You know, it's the end of the world, and, you know, sacrifices, and my eyes are bleeding, and, you know, you need to go find my friend in a field that went off fighting demons or whatever. Like, it's just a lot, you know? And Baldur's Gate, like, sure, yes, there are some very dark things in Baldur's Gate, and I'm sure there's going to be more as I progress through the game, but there's so much more color in the game, and there's just so much more life in the game with the characters. And, you know, you meet these people that are sarcastic, and you meet these people that are that sort of Diablo character where the only thing they care about is being like a warrior and fighting and all this stuff. Like, that's all they have to them. But, you know, they're balanced out by everybody else that you run across. And I think the writing is stronger in Baldur's Gate 3. I think that Diablo 4 it's a one-hit wonder in a lot of ways. You know, they kind of just have this one trick that they rely upon, and that's like bleakness and darkness, and that's about it. And some people really want that, and some people are okay with having that kind of one-note experience throughout the whole you know, the entirety of the game. And I'm just not, you know, like, I want some flavor. I want something to mix things up a little bit. And I think it kind of goes back to music, right? Like, if you listen to the same genre of music over and over again, and every band sounds the same, it's just like, at some point, like, don't you just get tired of that? Don't you just get tired of every vocalist in this genre sounds the same? Every band's playing the same patterns, is mid-tempo, you know, there's no highs and lows, peaks and valleys, you know, like, don't you want some color in your music, you know? And there's some people out there that don't. They just want to listen to, like, I only listen to this, and that's it. And that's great, but I want that variety. I want that color. I want things to be mixed up. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I'm really, really enjoying this. so much more than I thought. So, it's going to change. We've got some big releases coming up in a couple of weeks, but, I think Baldur's Gate's, I imagine I will have an update, with some continued thoughts next week, because I'm not really sure what else is coming out this week. We got thrown for a loop this week because the big thing originally was going to be WrestleQuest, but like the day before it came out, it got delayed. I was going to stream it and, probably make a video about it, and it was going to be a big topic of discussion for this. And I realized going into Friday night, it's like, man, I got to record this show in a couple of days and I only played one game. And so it was kind of like pushing me a little bit further to be like, maybe I should pick up Baldur's Gate 3 and, have something to talk about. And I'm really glad that I did, because I like I said, I am enjoying it very, very much. But I did play something else. So on the channel this past week, we had videos for Thronefall, which I covered last week, and Laika Aged Through Blood. So that video went up. That video was a bit of a disaster, and part of me wanted to just not put that video up because it didn't end well. But at the same time, I felt like it kind of highlighted some of the flaws in that game. Granted, it is just a demo. There is no release date for the game yet. But I thought that demo had some glaring issues in it that I wanted to keep in. The biggest of which was I couldn't change the resolution, the screen resolution. Every time I tried to change it outside of my native resolution, it would cut the image off. Even if I wanted it windowed, it would cut things off. It would zoom in to like really close on one corner of the screen. So if you were on the main menu, you were only seeing like the sky, and not the character sitting there. And then like where it says play, options, wish list, like all that, like the menu itself, it would all be off screen. And you could hear it, like if you click down on the controller, like you can hear it click through the menu. And if eventually I memorized where settings was so I can get back to the settings menu to try and fix it. But I mean, I spent a good 20, 30 minutes trying to figure this thing out. And I just couldn't. And I didn't want to visually show it in the video because then I wouldn't be able to get it reset. I kind of had to, I finally figured out a way to make it like work within the template that I put my gameplay videos up with, through some weird screen resizing and OBS and stuff. And I was just like, man, this is like a really bad first impression. Like this just kind of sucks. And then playing through the game, like the gameplay is fine. It's, so far from what I can tell, it's going to be like a Metroidvania, like a Dead Cells, or a Rogue Legacy, just minus the roguelike element. It's not a run-based game, but it's that side-scrolling action, like a Castlevania. But the main gimmick of this game is that you're on a motorcycle. You're on like what appears to be like a motocross bike. And so it's kind of got that traditional 2D combat gameplay, but it has a lot of elements from the Trials games, which to me, the Trials games, you look at them on paper and it's like, oh, it's a motorbike game. Well, or a racing game or something like that, or a time trial game. It's really not. I always thought Trials is a puzzle game. You're trying to figure out how to get from point A to point B, and you have all these obstacles within your way. So I always looked at them like a puzzle game. And I like it a lot because it plays very similar to Trials. Like the feel of the bike is really good. And that's what's most important in a game like this, is if you're going to spend all your time on this bike, then the feeling of being on the bike and doing your flips and stepping up and getting over rocks and obstacles and doing your wheelies and stoppies and balancing the bike, like that's got to feel good. And it does feel pretty good. It has a really nice mechanic where, you backflip in the air to reload your gun, or front flip to there's another thing that I can't remember what it is, but there's another gauge you can refill. And, pressing X when they fire at you and kind of using the bottom of your bike to deflect a bullet and all this stuff, and going into like slow motion in the air to shoot enemies. And like that's all really, really solid. And I really do like that. So I am looking forward to seeing what the final game plays like. But my biggest problem with the game, and if you watch the video, I get stuck at the end. And it seems a little comical at the end. I put like a little like title card in there that said like 15 minutes later. That was legit. I stopped, like, I kept recording because I didn't know when I was going to figure things out. But I mean, there was a straight 15 minutes of that video that I cut out where I was just going all throughout everywhere to try and figure out where to go. And because it's a demo and I've only seen like one place like really cover the game, I found out about it as I subscribed to the IGN YouTube channel, and they put up footage of it. And I was like, oh, this looks interesting, but I didn't see it anywhere else. I didn't see any other website talking about it. So I was trying to like look up footage or look up a forum post or something about like, where the hell do you go in this thing? And I just couldn't find anything. So I just kept kind of rolling around the world. And I kept ending up at the same place. And I was like, you know what? I guess I'm just going to end this video because I can't just spend all night trying to figure this out. And, I say it at the end of the video, it's like, I don't want to cut it out because that's a real thing. That's a real thing. I got lost in the game. And it'd be one thing to get lost in the game without a map. I understand that, but there is a map function in the game, but the map doesn't show you anything. It doesn't do anything. I felt like I genuinely felt like I had downloaded a pirated version of the game and that was their DRM. Like, oh, you're playing a cracked version of this game. Well, now your map doesn't work. But this was a demo downloaded through Steam. And it's just like the map does nothing. It doesn't show you where to go. It has points of interest, but it doesn't really, in relation to where you are, it doesn't mean anything. It kept like the objective was like, go further down. Well, I found staircases. I can't drive down the staircases. I just went all over the place. I couldn't find anything. And so I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to leave it in here because this is a glaring thing. I will fully take responsibility I'm not responsible for this, but I will fully admit that, I'm not great at video games. I'm not great at figuring things out in video games. My brain just doesn't work like that for whatever reason. So I play a lot of games with a walkthrough or a guide if I get stuck. I know some people find a great deal of enjoyment of banging their head against the wall in getting that perseverance of figuring out a puzzle in a game. And that's just not who I am. And so if I get stuck, of course, I'm going to try for a little bit to try and figure it out. There are plenty of games where I made it through without having to look things up, the puzzles in like Uncharted and stuff. I made it through all that without having to look it up or anything. But, like Viewfinder, which is a puzzle game that I'm still kind of playing through, here and there. Like if I get super stuck, I'm not just going to sit there on my precious free time, and just slam my head into the door, trying to figure it out. I'm going to look it up and be like, oh, okay, that's what I got to do. Okay, fair enough. And try and take those techniques going forward and see if they apply to other puzzles and, get better at the game. But yeah, I just got totally lost in this game and I felt like it was appropriate to leave it in because I imagine I'm probably not the only person. Of course, that being said, I'm sure everybody else figured it out that played the demo, but I don't know. I feel like I'm not the only person that got lost at that section.
Watching you get stuck like a dumbass is one of the highlights of my week.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. But that being said, despite getting lost and kind of having that little bit of that negative experience with it, I still recommend checking it out because it is a really cool twist on a very over-flooded genre of game. And yeah, give it a shot. I'm sure you'll figure out where the hell you have to go. But yeah, so that pretty much wraps up what I played. There's some other stuff that we're going to have videos coming out next week. 30XX came out and Mr. Run and Jump, I finally, picked it up. We're going to have videos, but it just as of the time of recording, I just haven't played them yet. So not going to talk about it this week, but we'll have them next week to talk about and the videos will be up. So look forward to those, but yeah, that'll kind of wrap it up, and we'll be back in just a moment with the news. All right, we are back with the news, and to be completely honest, it was a pretty slow news week. There really wasn't a lot that happened. I think everybody was just busy playing Baldur's Gate. But I did pull out a few things, and I guess the thing we'll start with, it's kind of a continuation of a story we touched upon previously, was that there was the big rumor going out that there was going to be a remaster or remake of the original Red Dead Redemption to newer systems, current systems. And, there was like a new logo that leaked out, and it just seemed like kind of all the pieces were coming into place with these rumors starting to kind of line up that this was going to happen. Well, we got the official announcement this week, and it's not a remake and it's not a remaster. It's just a port. They're putting Red Dead Redemption out on the PS4 and the Switch, and it's going to cost $50. Does not have the multiplayer component. You will get Undead Nightmare with it, and it is just a port. It's not a remaster or remake or anything, so no 60 frames a second, no upgraded visuals really at all, and it's odd because it's not going to have feature parity really with the Xbox Series X and S version, which does kind of upscale the graphics a little bit and does make things look a little bit nicer. I think the biggest part about this was that the fan community kind of invented in their own heads that this was going to be a remake or a remaster because they had, because of Red Dead Online and Red Dead 2, they had kind of redone the original map. And if you remember, like in the prologue of Red Dead 2, the epilogue of Red Dead 2, you kind of go back to that beginning area in a way, or in that area for Red Dead 1. And so it had like that engine, like that stuff exists in the second game's engine. I think that's what people wanted. People really just wanted the Red Dead 2 engine with the story and characters and all that from Red Dead 1. And that's just not what you're getting. And a lot of people are very, very upset about this. I completely understand why they would be upset. But at the same time, like, they never said that this was going to be a remake. They never said that this was going to be a remaster. Rockstar is just not really in the business of doing that. It's just not something that they do. They've never really done that before outside of those weird ones for San Andreas, GTA 3, and Vice City that came out last year that were a disaster. And that probably put them off, from doing this. I imagine the large majority of their resources at this point, if not 100% of their resources, are tied to Grand Theft Auto 6 development and the ongoing support and development of Grand Theft Auto Online. And especially if Grand Theft Auto Online kind of shifts to a new version with the release of the next GTA. I don't know if they're just going to keep it going as is and just keep adding more content based on GTA 6, or if they're going to say like a hard stop, like, hey, the game's going to get a visual upgrade because of the new game. It's, a brand new story for GTA Online. Like, I don't really know how they're going to handle that. Once that game gets closer to release and, we get some more information, I'm sure we'll find out. But, it does kind of suck, that this is not a PS5 version. It's a PS4 version. Now you can play it on your PS5. And I'm curious how well it's going to run on the Switch. So I think it's just kind of deflating for fans of the game that were hoping for this. But I think it's also a good lesson to realize that just because you want it to happen and just because you convince yourself it's going to happen doesn't mean that it actually is. It's like people that get upset, let's use the Marvel movies for an example. If a character they like dies or a character they like is portrayed in a different way than the headcanon that they made, it's like, can you really get upset about that? They didn't do it the way you wanted them to do it. Like, it's, you didn't write the script, So I get that it's disappointing. I think what's more disappointing is the fact that it's still not on PC. That's what's more disappointing to me, at least. I don't have a desire to play Red Dead 1 again. I have been playing Red Dead 2 again, but, I played Red Dead 1 I think twice at this point. I played obviously, when it came out, and I think I played it again later on, but I'm good. I don't ever need to really go back to that game because the world of 2 is just so fleshed out and so much. It's just a better game in really every way. I know some people prefer the story to Red Dead 1. That's fine. They prefer Marston to Arthur, but for me, I'm firmly in the camp of Red Dead 2 being the better game and the game that I want to go back to. But I do think it's odd that it's not on PC. Red Dead 2 is a PC port. The Grand Theft Autos had PC ports. Like, it is strange because if you just give them the port, they'll do the work for you. The modders will, it's free labor at that point for Red Dead. The modders will do the work because if you can run an Xbox emulated version of Red Dead. I think it's the Xenia emulator for the 360, and you can get that thing running in 4K and 60 frames a second, and it looks really nice. So believe me, if this got a true PC port, I'm sure that this game would look incredible, given the time, enough time for the modders to work on it. I think they would end up with something really, really special. So it's sad, and disappointing, but it's, they have their focus elsewhere and it's just not a priority for them. To Rockstar now, it's like, well, hey, with the exception of PC, you can play this game however you want. If you want to play it on PS5, you can. If you want to play it on Switch, you can. If you want to play it on Xbox, you can. But I think the lack of the PC version is kind of strange. That's definitely a puzzling one for sure.
Listen, I know that people wanted a PC version, but why give people what they want? They'll still complain. Hollywood said I shouldn't be seen anymore, so I switched to television and they're still mad.
I don't think that's why they still complain, man. I think it's you throwing beer bottles through people's windows. That's, I think it's your problematic behavior, not so much your on-screen talent. But yeah, so Red Dead fans will just kind of continue to wait. But like I said, if you really want to play that game as polished as it can be, for the most part, there's obviously always issues with emulation. I mean, you can emulate it. You can go down that route if you have a PC that can pull it off. So. All right, we've been talking about Modern Warfare 3 for a little bit on the show now. It was getting, it kept getting leaked, and Activision was kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge, acknowledging it, on social media, and then said that they were going to do a gameplay reveal within Warzone and all this stuff, or not a gameplay reveal, but like an official announcement through Warzone. Well, we finally got an official announcement. It is coming out in November. It's coming out November 10th. And I'm sure there'll be, some way to get the game early if you buy the $900 boot in your ass military version or whatever the fuck. But the biggest change, it seems, is that everything is red. Usually Call of Duty is very green. The trailer is very red. The graphic for Captain Price is very red. So, yeah. I don't know. Like I said, I have a lot of problems with the way that Activision is handling this. They said that Modern Warfare 2 is going to hold for 2 years, and a lot of people got very invested into that. I got very invested in that. I ended up buying the $100 version of the game to get a head start on that battle pass. And really, I sunk a lot of time into it and then fell off. But I was like, it's okay that I fall off because I'll get back into it. At the end of the summer, or like around the time the next one would traditionally come out, I'm going to be looking to play that. I like, I'm used to my fall, Christmas time, holiday season, first person shooter. That's kind of my jam. I love doing that. Just, I for whatever reason, I tie that time of year together with playing with an FPS. And, when they said that, like, they started backtracking and said, like, oh no, we're going to just do a sequel. It's just like, man, like, how much more disrespectful of your fan base can you possibly get? They really don't do a very good job of treating their fans well. From not giving people maps that they want. And I get fan service, you can only do so much. Just like we said, in the last story, fans build things up in their head. But if you're calling your game Modern Warfare 2, you would think that you're going to put some of the maps from the original Modern Warfare 2 in it. Arguably the most popular Call of Duty game ever made. And you do nothing. It's just like, really? Like, all right, come on. Like, really? And I get it. They focus so much time and effort into Warzone. And they were really pushing the DMZ mode with this game that maybe the traditional multiplayer, the backbone of Call of Duty, still probably the main reason why people buy this game. I'm sure it's close with Warzone, but I would say that probably more people are playing the multiplayer than are playing Warzone. I don't have numbers. It's just a guess and a hunch, but I feel like more people do that. The people that I know that play multiplayer Call of Duty, with the exception of like one person, none of them play Warzone. I don't play Warzone. I've played it here and there. I played it a little bit when it came out, and I played like one game of it when it, last year. But, I just like the traditional multiplayer. I like playing domination. That's just what I want to do. Stick me on shipment and I'm a happy boy. I'm good. I think that if they're going to make this game and it's going to come out and they want it to not just feel like $70 DLC to Modern Warfare 2, then they've got to tap into some of that fan service. Like, half these fucking maps better be really solid, brand new maps, and half these maps better be like, here are the greatest hits of Modern Warfare 2, which is really weird, because it's like, okay, well, this is Modern Warfare 3, you would think that they would redo the Modern Warfare 3 maps. Nope, they're going to the rumor going around is like, yeah, they didn't get around to it in Modern Warfare 2, they'll just do it for Modern Warfare 3, so it's just such a weird thing. But at this point, what does it all matter? Because they're just making the same, all these games have the same name now. They can't even come up with new names for their games, so I don't know. It's so bizarre, and it's so puzzling to be a Call of Duty fan. And I think the thing that probably pisses me off the most about this is, this game is coming out roughly, was it like 3 weeks ish after Spider-Man does. And I think if I remember looking at the calendar for releases, actually I can pull it up real quick. I wrote down like all the games I'm interested in playing for the rest of the year, so I can kind of have a handy little list. Yeah, so the last 2 games I have on my list are Spider-Man 2, which comes out on October 20th, City Skylines 2, which comes out just a few days later on the 24th, and that was it for the rest of the year. And now this is coming out on November 10th, which means I'm going to have Spider-Man 2 done by then. City Skylines I'll still be playing some more of. I'll be cleaning up other stuff that I didn't get to for the year because, obviously once December hits, that's when I start figuring out my Game of the Year stuff, which means that in November, I'm going to be looking for something new to play, which means I'm just going to be a sucker again and just buy the new Call of Duty. Because I'm going to have that itch in the back of my head. It's like, hey, this is the time of year you play first person shooters. Why are you not playing a first person shooter? Open up your wallet and go get one. So, that's what's going to end up happening, I guess, so it's a shame that it's being handled this way. I think it's I think they have been in a constant state of fumbling a football for a few years now. And I don't think that the ball has hit the ground yet. It's still being juggled in the air. They're still kind of grasping at straws really to keep things, together. But if this game doesn't hit and gets another negative reaction like last year's game does, where last year's game started off pretty good, but public opinion dropped off pretty hard after that. And a lot of people kind of dropped off hard of Warzone because they just weren't happy with some of the changes that were made. They're trying to make some changes to the game. They're bringing back slide canceling, which is like a high level technique in the game that's been out of the game for a little while now. So they're trying to address some common complaints. But if this is another down year, then I would say that the window of Call of Duty rising back to prominence is closed and we are back. It's like a sports team. Your team does really bad, so they enter a rebuild, and they hopefully rebuild into a contender. Their rebuild, it was Modern Warfare, the first one in 2019, that brought them back to contender status. And then Cold War and Vanguard just didn't do it, and they hung a lot on Modern Warfare 2 last year, and it did it at first, and then it dropped off real hard. I think this is it. If they don't get this back with Modern Warfare 3, then I think Call of Duty kind of fades out for a little bit. It'll still be popular, still make a ton of money. Like, don't get me wrong. Call of Duty's always been a high seller, but it's going to go back to kind of the down years, just like, the years of like Call of Duty Ghost and stuff like that, where it wasn't the pop culture thing. It wasn't the game that everybody was talking about at the time. It's just going to get lost in the conversation, and they'll have to kind of go back to the drawing board. But, the thing that they really need to understand is like the easiest way to do this is just make the game play well, which they know how to do. Modern Warfare 2 plays great. I don't have any complaints with the way that game plays. I don't know if they need to hire new map designers that are coming in with fresh ideas or what, but their map design lately has been fucking terrible. Like, seriously, some of the worst maps ever in the last game. Like, just awful. Like, to the point where it's just like, I get like a few of them in a row, and it's just like, I just turn the game off because it's just like, okay, I just don't want to play any of these maps. They've got to get some fresh ideas percolating in there, So we'll see what happens. But all right. Another new game announcement. This one kind of came out of left field. I didn't expect to see this, and I certainly didn't expect it to be a different genre. But THQ Nordic had a small little mini event the other day where they announced some stuff. They put out like a trailer for Alone in the Dark, as their new entry. But the thing that kind of caught my eye is that they are making a new South Park game. And I was like, oh, that's cool. It's been a while since the last one. And I figured it was going to be another RPG. They did Fractured But Whole was the last one, which played kind of like a Chrono Trigger-ish style. And then the first game, which was, God, why can I not remember? Stick of Truth, thank you. I say thank you. I'm reading it myself off the screen. Stick of Truth I really enjoyed, mostly because Stick of Truth had that very, like, that Mario RPG style of combat, which is my favorite style of combat for a turn-based RPG, but it also focused on a lot of references and jokes and Easter eggs to the, like, maybe first 10 years of South Park, which is when I was a regular viewer, and then Fractured But Whole was definitely focusing on more modern South Park, which I'm just not as familiar with. South Park, I like the show. I grew up watching it. I remember I watched it the day it came. It was actually a really funny memory, because I remember they were showing the commercials for it, and my dad was like, you can't watch that. Like, I don't think that's going to be for you. And then I remember I had shut my bedroom door. So in my brain, that meant that my parents couldn't see that I had the television on. Of course, me being stupid, I don't understand that light leaks out, from the bottom. And I had turned on South Park, and I was laughing. And I realized that my dad, who was in another room, was laughing at the same time that I was laughing. And so after the episode was done, I opened the door, and we both kind of looked at each other, and he was like, that's pretty good, wasn't it? And I was like, yeah, that's pretty good. So then after that, it was just like, we just watched South Park. But, I loved that show. I watched it probably the first 10 or 11 seasons. I was a regular viewer. And then I just kind of dropped off, and I would, when they hit streaming eventually, and they did, at first I think they did that South Park Studios thing, which was just kind of its own website to go and look at it. Now it's all on, it's either on Paramount Plus or HBO now. I can't remember which, but I'll go back and watch some episodes here and there. And, if I hear that a new episode is really good, then I'll go and watch it. That documentary they did was like 6 days to air, 7 days to air, about the making of how they do an episode of South Park. I think is like a fantastic look at how like animation comes together and how they stay topical, because they make the episode every week. It's not like a traditional television show where they film for months and then they go and air, they just air the episodes now that they're done when it's time to go. It's how they're able to stay relevant and up to date with current events. So, I was like, I just figured, okay, this is going to be another one of those turn-based RPGs, and it's not. It's hard to tell what the game is. Initially, when I saw it, it looked to me almost like a real-time strategy game, but I don't think it is. I think it's kind of like Redfall. I think it's like a co-op, like, action game, kind of. It's in 3D, so it doesn't look like the show. The last two video games looked identical to an episode of the show. It was incredible how well they made it look and play. So it's a 3D game, much like the N64 first-person shooter. I saw a lot of people complaining about the way it looks online. Obviously, yes, it's weird to see this 2D show in 3D, but I honestly don't think it looks that bad. It looks a little cheap. This looks kind of like a budget game. I don't know if it is. We have no idea, what the price or the scope of this game is, but the kind of the quote, the synopsis of the game is: an all-new South Park game is coming in 3D. Join Cartman, Stan, Kyle, and Kenny in three-dimensional glory to celebrate the most magical day in any young child's life, a snow day. The name of the game is South Park Snow Day. It's being developed by Question Games. And it says they previously worked on two first-person titles called The Magic Circle and The Blackout Club. I have never heard of either of those. So yeah, this is not a Ubisoft game like the other ones. Obviously, it's THQ Nordic with this developer that I just am not familiar with. But the trailer is out there. The trailer does show some gameplay. The first half is just kind of like Cartman, dressed like a wizard, declaring it's a snow day. And then you do get to see some footage, and you see like a glowing circle around the character's feet. So that to me reads that like, okay, maybe if you're playing this by yourself, you could switch between characters, or if you're playing co-op, it's just an easy way of figuring out who everybody is. It's a little tough to tell. Like I said, it looks cheap-ish, it looks budget-ish, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it is, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's not going to be fun. But I do have, a little, cautious, thought on the game. But yeah, I'm curious about it. It doesn't say anything about when it's, coming out or anything like that. I think it said maybe 2024 at the end of the trailer. Let me run the trailer's just sitting here. Yeah, it just says 2024. So yeah, some point next year, hopefully, and we'll check it out when it comes out. But it's cool to see that they're doing another game. It's just I guess I'm just a little surprised that it's not a continuation of the RPG thing. All right, last up for news this week is they are making a PS5 Slim. That is the rumor that has been going around, but it looks like it's becoming more and more reality as some leaked pictures and videos hit X over the past week.
When are they going to make a slim version of you?
Yeah. So it looks slimmer than a PS5, you know, judging by the photos. It has these like cutout designs on the side where like the plastic kind of separates. And it looks like the reason why it's on there for the one side is that the disk drive will detach, I guess, to make it more slim. But at that point, you're laying it down, right? And then it's next to it. So now it's taking up more space width-wise. I guess if it's not as tall and you put it next to it, I don't know. I guess I need to see it, like a legitimate photo of it, you know, that's not these weird close-up kind of things for me to get like a true idea of how this works, because it seems like it just takes up the same amount of space as a PS5, I guess maybe just not height-wise, or more space than it does width-wise. I don't know. It's hard to say. The rumor is that it's going to be $400, and it won't come with the drive, and you'll have to buy the drive separately, which is going to be weird because I want to see what the system looks like without the drive attached. Is it going to look odd? Is it going to have a white backing underneath it that you can snap on so it doesn't just look exposed? There's just too many questions right now to really have a strong idea of this. You know, the $400 price point, that's the same price point for the PS5 digital version that's out right now that doesn't have a disc drive. Though I will say, I saw this morning that Newegg right now, and obviously you take this with a grain of salt because this video is coming out, you know, on, you know, this information is going to be good forever. But I saw that as of right now on Sunday, August 13th, they are actually selling the disc PS5s for $400 at Newegg. So definitely a far cry from, you know, hunting all over the world to try and find them when scalpers were getting them and they were impossible to find in stores that didn't have any stock, to now that they're just on sale, especially when other countries have raised the price. Although I guess that over in the United Kingdom, they had a sale recently on the system. I think it was only $50 discount. But for me, you know, I don't have any desire or need for a PS5 Slim. I don't think it's going to be, you know, this definitely isn't like a PS5 Pro. It's not going to run any better or have a larger hard drive, I imagine. Especially if they're going to sell it for $400. I can't imagine they're going to put any different parts in it. I get that the system is very large. You know, it's just the way it is. You know, earlier this year, I kind of changed my TV setup. I got a new entertainment stand and all that. Because I was standing my PS5 up initially, and same with the Xbox, and it just kind of looked a little weird, you know, with the way everything was set up. My TV was kind of too big for the entertainment stand that I had. So I ended up mounting it on the wall, and I put it really high up on the wall for two reasons. One, because I sit so far back away from the TV that having it higher up on the wall makes sense. And then also, so it just had guided or, you know, clearance underneath it, you know, for the PS5 to be there. You know, I've definitely, you know, I've seen TV too high on Reddit. I definitely am with it. My TV was, if you walk into the room, it's like, man, that TV is really high up on the wall. But once you actually sit down on my couch, you're like, oh, okay, I kind of get it. But when I changed everything around this year, I got the new TV stand. I took the TV off the wall and put it just on a stand on the thing. And now I lay the PS5 down, you know, horizontally in the little, it's got two cubes that kind of fit, you know, it fits the PS5 and then some games next to it. And then I have my Xbox Series X underneath it in a different cube laying down sideways with a potted plant next to it because, you know, we gotta fancy the place up a little bit. So the space isn't really an issue for me. You know, obviously, you know, if you have a really odd setup or an older TV stand that just has smaller cubes or shelves or whatever, then yeah, it can be kind of weird to try and get this thing in there. As it is a massive, massive system. Both of the current systems are pretty big. My PS5 is next to me right now because I have not played my PS5 in a few weeks, not since I streamed Call of Duty like 2 weeks ago or whatever it was. So it's just still sitting in my office, and it's like, it's almost as tall as my PC tower. You know, I don't have the biggest PC tower case because I did change the case, but I mean, it is an inch and a half less high, I'm going to say, maybe 2 inches shorter than a PC case. I mean, that's a big console, you know, it really is. So, you know, for some people, they're going to run right out and get the Slim. You know, it's just not for me. You know, we'll see what happens if they do a Pro version. I guess I still think a Pro version is super unnecessary, but hey, it is what it is. But that's going to wrap things up for the news. I do have some channel stuff we have to get into. So the first thing I want to talk about is a big thank you to everybody. This past week I said this not too long ago, so it does feel good to be able to say it again. The most views on the channel was this last week. The Red Dead Redemption short video that I put up on either Wednesday or Thursday, I can't remember what it is, that is now the most viewed video of all time on the channel. So thank you very much to that, or for that. That video did pretty well. I put that video on, I said last week I started a TikTok. That video did well on TikTok as well. So it seemed like people really, for whatever reason, connected with that video. And that kind of scripted comedy style is kind of what I think I'm going to stick with for these shorts. I think that's kind of that's working well for me. If I look at all the videos and all the shorts that I have done and kind of categorize them, based on kind of what their content was, it's by far and away, it's those comedy short things are performing the best. So I think that's what we're gonna stick with. So the plan right now is to have 2 a week. Sometimes it might not be possible. There'll only be one, but two a week I think is probably the plan going forward. But beyond that, I guess the next thing is, speaking of views, again, this is just wild to me, and I have to just say thank you to everybody again. I started this channel in January of 2020. So it took me from January of 2020 to July of 2023 to hit 10,000 total views on the channel. And then it took me from July 2023 to August 2023 to hit 20,000 views. So, that's that's a massive uptick. I've doubled in subscribers over the past 6 weeks, so I really can't say thank you enough to everybody that's checking this stuff out. The people that take the time to leave a comment. Some of the comments on TikTok have been great. Just interacting with people has been really good. That's been a lot of fun. So yeah, definitely, leave your thoughts, man. We'll have a conversation, and, we'll get weird in there on those videos. But yeah, so coming up, so the schedule for the next week or so is going to be a little odd. So this coming week, so tomorrow, there will be a video going up. I don't know if it's going to be the 30XX video or the Mr. Run and Jump video, but one or the other. And then whichever one it isn't, the other one will go up on Thursday. There's going to be at least one short this week that will be going up. If not two, I should be able to get 2 out. I don't, as of right now, I don't see a reason why I won't be able to get 2 out. And then Friday night is the beta for Mortal Kombat 1. I went and pre-ordered my copy last week. I traded in some games, and actually it covered the entire cost of the game, so that was nice. And I got my beta code. So we'll probably stream on Friday night. I'm hoping we'll stream on Friday night that beta, because if we don't, then I don't have time to do it before it expires. So that kind of coincides with the next piece of news, is that there will not be an episode of this show next week. I'm going out of town next weekend, and it's a long drive. I have to drive 6 hours there and 6 hours back in the same day. So I won't get home until very late in the morning, and I have to prepare for the trip. I have to pack, and my dog is going to stay with somebody, so I have to get him ready and all that stuff, and just trying to write the show and research the show for next week is just not going to happen. And I don't know how much time I'm going to have to play games. I realized earlier, I said, next week's episode, we'll talk about 30XX and Mr. Runner Jump. There is no next week's episode. So you will be getting, so no episode on the 21st, but you will be getting a supersized episode on the 28th, because we'll have, more games to talk about, more news. I'll still keep, curating the news and all that, and we'll get going. And then I need to talk to friend Davis to see if he wants to record with me that following weekend, so we can get his thoughts on Armored Core, and Starfield will be out and all that good stuff. And so we'll see if we can pull that off. I don't know what his schedule is like. And then, so it's crazy, but this coming Friday is 2 weeks from Starfield. And it turns out it's actually not 2 weeks from Starfield, because it looks like Starfield is actually, if you buy the version that gives you the early access, it's actually not going to come out on September 1st like everybody thought. It's actually going to come out the evening of August 31st. Right now, Xbox website is saying that that game is going to unlock at 8 p.m. on August 31st. If you pre-order the game with that extra version of it. So I am taking the first off from work because my plan was I'm taking that off. It's Labor Day weekend here in the States. Give me a 4-day weekend, but it's also that Starfield weekend. I want to play Starfield all weekend. So my plan was to stream a bunch of the game during the day on the 1st, which I still may do. But now it looks like, hey, if that game's going to unlock that Thursday night, the 31st to 8 p.m., why don't we just stream right when it comes out at 8 p.m.? I should be able to pre-install the game. We should be able to just get up and go and start fresh. So I might just end up doing that. So once we get closer, we'll know for certain. But I think that's kind of the plan right now is that night we'll stream a couple hours of it and then maybe come back the next day and do some more. And yeah, just kind of dig into it. So, yeah, it's going to be an exciting time coming up over the next few weeks, big releases, lots to talk about. But yeah, just one more time, just to reiterate, no episode next week on the 21st because I'm going out of town. Please pray for me. I did the same trip last year. I'm going to Boston and I got stuck in an hour and 45-minute traffic jam where I could physically see my destination. I was that close to it that I could see my destination, and I was stuck probably less than 1,000 feet away, I would say, from it. And it took me an hour and 45 minutes to get to it once I finally got through the city of Boston. So hopefully it's not that bad. I almost was late last year. But yeah, last year I got to meet John Cena's dad there, so that was cool. So we'll see if he pops back up. But yeah, so thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you throughout the week for those gameplay videos. But it'll be a couple weeks until the next episode of this show. So take it easy, Christian. Anything you want to say before we head out?
All right. You gotta wrap this up. I need to use this computer so I can get back to romancing every object in Baldur's Gate. Those barrels aren't gonna fuck themselves.
That's very true, man. Good life advice. Those barrels aren't going to fuck themselves. Take it easy, everybody.